going to move into our first major theme of the day, technology. As digital transformation accelerates, we must examine how AI is reshaping safety practice and ethical decision-making. So to lead this discussion on AI and safety for rethinking human risk, please welcome your moderator, Isaac Ochulor, Senior QHSE Engineer and Digital Transformation Strategist at Suhail Almazroui Transportation. As you can see, Isaac is a very cool, relaxed gentleman. Joining Isaac are our esteemed panel members, Dr. Waddah, Dr. Islam Adra, and Hari Kumar Polavarapu.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us, and gentlemen, you're welcome. The conversation that we want to have today has a lot to do with something that I think is completely quite overdue, which has to do with artificial intelligence. And I think over the years, we have seen that AI used to be something that we think that is for the big technology companies or for the big tech, if you want to use that. But we started seeing in 2022 something tremendously, completely changed when OpenAI launched the ChatGPT-3 that became an open source. So from that until date, AI has completely been something that has touched base on every key dependencies of businesses. And as a matter of fact, as at 2025, the global spending on AI in 2025 sits at 1.5 trillion US. So what that means is that AI is no longer a hype. So that has become something that's going to be part of every economy and every business. And today, we are going to take a look at some of the areas where this is being touching base in the area of in the area of health and safety. How we want to start this has to do with looking at some of the areas in the area of governance. We want to touch base in the area of culture, and then take a look at how AI is also touching base, from the frontline operations. So because at this point, what is really going on right now is that you can type in a large language model or ChatGPT, and it can give you a conversation or a response that sounds like a colleague of yours. So what it means is that that level of capability is something that has shifted into the safety critical environment. And that's exactly what we are discussing here today. And the question is, today, we have been able to use AI to be able to design predictive analytics. We have been able to use AI to be able to design how you can be able to spot patterns of risk in most of the operations that we are seeing today. And with that, the question is AI, going to be something that can support safety? The answer is yes. But at the same time, the real question is, how do we deploy AI in a way that it doesn't create some kind of blind spots? And that is the essence of this conversation today, gentlemen. So, Dr. Waddah, I'm going to start with you, on this conversation, and then we're going to touch base on the area of governance and accountability. I remember over the years, around sometime in 2022, there is this event that happened in the North Sea of an oil and gas drilling rigs. And it happens that the company implemented an AI system that can actually, trigger any kind of anomaly in their operations. Well, what happened is that over time, the AI system was able to override a manual process. So now, that was really how the AI was trained. But as a matter of fact, the management and the organizations and the head of departments of these operations that we are having one question in their mind. When AI take actions, who is responsible and who is accountable? And that is a very big question in the mind of everyone. I'm sure maybe for most of them, people who are sitting here today. So, Dr. Waddah, you have been a champion in the area of governance. You have done it on a global level. What I want to ask today is, looking at what AI, how it has been implemented now that we can see it in occupational health and safety, in the critical safety environment, how can we be able to define boundaries of accountability when it comes to AI system in the workplace?
Sure. Thank you very much for having us here. And it's a very interesting question. And we have been discussing this for the past couple of years, actually, as practitioners and in different forums as well. Let me start by maybe talking about the issues. You use two words, which is responsibility and accountability. And so we use the AI like we use any kind of other system to try to help us improve. So why do we use AI? We use AI because it is for three key reasons. One of them, it makes business for us more financially competitive. It reduces our reliance on kind of employees. We can do things faster, more efficiently, etc. And ultimately, the understanding is that it reduces the amount of error, because then you remove the human factors because the AI. But the interesting thing is that how we train the AI and these algorithms, to make decisions, ultimately makes the AI, and especially this agentic AIs, where you have one AI actually managing various different AIs. But I want to go back to some principles which are important in governance. One of them is that a system in the form of an entity exists to deliver certain operations of value, right? And the value is connected to the shareholder investment. So the investor invests in a company. Then a group of people, humans, are involved in generally working together to try to collaborate to deliver that value. They're involved in different ways. And they're involved because they have different kind of skills and knowledge and abilities and faculties. So that's why we use them. Then everyone is responsible for safety of the operation one way or another, depending on their function and role, right? So we must bear this in mind. Then some delegate that responsibility, but some others, important to appreciate, we delegate responsibility, but we do not delegate accountability, right? So based on that, so we only really engage the AI to manage and control operations depending on the feeds of information that they're getting from the data from the system. So it can make a mistake by the algorithm making a mistake, or that you fed it with wrong data, or it read and analyzed the data incorrectly. Yeah. So generally, because the AI is trained in such a way, the loss or the chance of loss due to error is much less. Now, if we go back to the principles of duty of care, we all carry a certain duty of care, so we are all legally responsible. Your question here is that if we hold the operator accountable, he could argue that he's been given this human-machine interface, right? And he was guided by an AI having some free will, right? So the agentic AI now has free will, because you're telling the AI, you can do this, and then you can make decisions, right? And you can go to the next step, right? So this is where the real trick comes in. We have this thing between the employer and the employee. In law, it's called vicarious liability. So even if I employ my friend Harry here to do something, I'm the employer. Harry goes and makes a mistake. Like, I employ him as a driver. He's driving a company vehicle, and he makes a mistake, and he crashes the car, and that leads to loss. I, as the employer, continue to carry a liability called the vicarious liability, right? Because I've employed Harry. Harry made the mistake, right? But he's in my employment, right? So then, if we take the software developer, right? The software developer might come to you and say to you, listen, I've developed the software in good faith. I've given you all these things. Yes, he will never give you 100% guarantee. He'll say that there is it's 99.9%, whatever, but it can go wrong. But so what happens if it goes wrong? So I think they carry a contributory liability as a software.
As a software.
But most important, where I'm really interested in, is the board of directors. Because, as I said at the beginning, the reason why we are engaging in employing AI to do things is because we are trying to save money, save time, reduce error, right? So these are decisions, and we're making big investments. I mean, you mentioned in your opening how much investments we're talking about. So they're making these investments, they want a return on investment. So directors at the end of the day also are very much liable for deciding on if they want to bring in. So they are the controlling mind of the organization. They must be made aware of the systems that they put in place to engage AI to control. So, just like they have enterprise risk management systems, and so they have to be aware of the risks in the operation, and they must be aware of the risks of the AI and engaging the AI. So I don't think, this whole argument about, well, who's accountable, who's responsible. I employed Harry to do a job. Harry did a good job. Harry did a bad job. I employed AI. AI did a good job. AI did a bad job. In all cases, I've delegated that responsibility, but I remain accountable. So the employer, anybody who engages with AI or uses AI, continues to carry the accountability. But there is also contributory negligence that can be, apportioned to the AI developer or whatever. But ultimately, I decided. Nobody hit me and said you must use AI. I decided to use AI, so I must remain accountable for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Waddah. That's quite amazing. Now, I would like us gentlemen to shift this conversation a little bit from the part of governance. Let us talk about a bit of, predictive tools and responsibility shift. So because when you look at how digital intelligence is being implemented today, they are all part of those, predictive models. So because AI is not intelligence, but AI is intelligence engineered. So this is quite what the distinction is. And as a matter of fact, predictive tools and responsibility shift has to be something that we need to also take a look at it and then understand how, are they interfacing, with critical safety environment. And I remember there was a time I read an article about an oil refinery somewhere in the Middle East. And it happens that the company actually implemented an AI system. So that was like kind of a predictive analytics. And what it does is that the model is being designed, okay, to trigger anomalies, in the pipeline, to be able to find where they have corrosions, risk in the pipelines. Now, what happened was that it was a good thing. The government, the management and the organizations, they were so happy about it. The output was completely, top-notch for them. Over time, from what I read from that article is that they conducted an audit after like 2 months, within the team. And what the auditors found was that the manual inspection within the team has dropped by 40%. So as a matter of fact, that raised a concern, and they started questioning or have interviews with the team. And the team said, yeah, that's true. The inspections dropped by 40% because we are now having, a better reliance on AI. So because you have all of those predictive models that can actually do what we are actually, doing manually and all that. Now, Mr. Harry, I'm going to bring this to your table because for you, you've been a global leader and you have led oil and gas operations, with a lot of accolades. The question I want to ask is, looking at this scenario, do you think that predictive tools can be genuinely, manage risk? Or do you think that we are completely unintentionally, shifting, the risk that should have been done by individual or by human, now to AI? So do you think that we can genuinely trust, AI, for risk predictions and all that, genuinely?
Right, good question. That with experience in the entire supply chain within oil industry and over the last maybe 40 years, I've seen industry moving from purely manual to semi, predictive analysis. And as we move forward, we have seen incidents that happen periodically, maybe once in 10 years. These are like massive incidents like BP Macando, for example, a Texas refinery or right from Bhopal. So we're wondering, as we build safety culture in organizations, we're wondering how do we improve this? How do we predict if something can go wrong like this major accidents, right? It was bugging all of us as safety professionals. So we started implementing integrated management systems, trained people, as I said, inspections, manual inspections, and so on and so forth. And the regulations, interestingly, have also tried to catch up because you can't allow industry to kill people, right? Very fundamental. So the regulatory regime is ramping up. Industry is aging. Assets are mostly 30, 40-year-old assets. So we want to honestly sweat the assets, get maximum, out of the assets. See the conflicting interests, right? Two conflicting interests. So then came the AI regime. As we went through AI, we started adopting tools that can help us predict better because when there are non-linear processes in a refinery, for example, or downhole 4,000 meters below ground, you don't know what's happening. So you got to go for sensors, try to interpret what's happening. So we have a lot of data, quite complex at times, and non-linear. The human brain cannot really process non-linear information. We are good at static, right? I go at 40 kilometer speed, I can predict reasonably. I go at 140, I'm sorry, my brain can't process. There's so many variables, quite dynamic, right? So when it came to the dynamic risk management, we had to depend on tools. And industry gave the tools, whether it's machine learning, as I said, with a lot of the agentic AIs. Those tools are being incorporated in the industry into the management systems. Now, your question was, do we go with predictive analysis and assure ourselves that we are doing well? So where is the human element in that, right? So, the question we quite often look at is, AI is based on data sets. If I give good data, a large amount of data, it can give you good quality, right? So the biggest question is on quality of data that is being given to the AI, right?
Absolutely.
So if my refinery doesn't have enough data for the last 30 years because people have thrown records away, for example, they haven't recorded properly, all manual systems, then I am at a loss to give a good quality data. Then I fall back on somebody in US, Europe, other refineries of similar size, what kind of incidents that happen, what kind of deviations from normal that happen. So this is all about training that model as perfect as possible. Today we are not there. Today, as I speak, we are not there yet. We can't fly by wire. We are not aviation yet.
Absolutely.
So we need to reach a level where we can literally fly by wire. At the same time, we need to have certain checks and balances. Now, what we are doing today is to strengthen those checks and balances. At every stage, if there's an output from AI, who is the owner? Dr. Waddah rightly said, there has to be accountability. You can't wish away, right? I can't say tomorrow because AI tool was not trained properly, it didn't give good output, so we failed. You can't say that. You got to own up. Whether it's board of directors, whether it is a CEO, whether it is the directors, or frontline. So what industry ideally should be doing now is to define those frameworks where you have the responsibility and accountability, the RACI charts, for various decisions from models. So that is essential today. We do that slowly. We are still people-oriented systems, people control. They sign work permits even today, right? We don't allow AI to give a permit on its own and somebody comes and builds. I'm sorry, no. No process plant allows, as far as my knowledge goes. We are not there yet. So I think as we train more and more, get good quality data, still accountability has got to be defined clearly in a framework. I think that's where I see predictive as an important tool. I'm not saying that we shouldn't adopt AI. AI is essential. It's not an option today. AI is here. It is going to strengthen. We got to adapt it. We should be prepared for it. I think that's where it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. And another shift I want us to take a look at is that, believe me, what we are trying to do here today is for us to be able to touch base on little of much of those areas that are quite very critical. Because today, sitting here and having this conversation has a lot to do with health and safety. And those critical safety, environments concerns all of us. And when it comes to AI, when we talk about AI, it is not something that when you implement it and then it becomes a plug and play. Now, when we talk about digital transformation, and that has always been that framework when you're trying to implement AI in your operations. Now, we understand that a whole bunch of AI failures that we have seen today from statistics, they start from because there is no proper buy-in from the stakeholders. So as a matter of fact, when leadership is completely transparent and then also accountable, and then be able to let the stakeholders or the workers or the personnel or the crew to be able to understand what AI can do and what it can't. So what I'm talking about is that there should be a boundary, a limit, about what it tells them that this is what this digital intelligence can do and what it cannot. So in that way, you will be able to have their sense of belonging, and they can actually, be able to follow suit to support you for you to do that. So all these AI systems that we have seen over the years, and people are talking about the AI failures and all that, there has always been an issue that has to do with leadership, not being transparent about that. Dr. Islam, you have been a champion in the area of leadership with a whole bunch of accolades that has to do with this industry. Health and safety has always been something that you have always, conducted, and they have a lot of, leadership accolades on you. I would like to ask you this question. What leadership behaviors, based on what we are looking at today, are most critical for building trust in AI safety system? And at the same time, we can be able to keep the human judgment central.
Yeah, look, good question. When you put trust and AI in the same sentence, it's kind of a oxymoron. So there's a kind of a contradiction there, because AI has done a very good job for itself building a very bad reputation. When we think of AI, especially in the workplace, we think of surveillance, we think of control, we think of monitoring, and even the replacement of workers. So it's done a very good job at building a bad reputation, and that's why leadership behaviors are extremely critical if we want to implement AI in any organization. Now, to answer your question, I think first we need to understand what do we mean by trust, right? What do we mean by trust? Because that's critical to understand in order to answer that question. And there's a lot of models of trust in the academic literature. But one of the most popular ones, and one that I personally use in my work, is one proposed by Mayer and his colleagues in 1995. And in that model, he suggests 3 pillars of organizational trust. The first one is integrity. What most of us associate with trust is integrity. Is the leader perceived to have integrity? Are they perceived to be honest? Do they walk the talk, right? The second one is care. Are they perceived to be caring as leaders? Do they care about us? And the last one is competence. Do they know what they're talking about? Do people feel like they are competent? Now, when we look at trust in that model, in that framework, we can kind of contextualize and understand why AI can garnish a lot of mistrust if it is not implemented properly. So look at care, for example. Generally companies and leaders, they run by values. They advertise these values in organizations like trust, integrity, respect. These are values that company claim to run by, and leaders as well. And so if workers look at an organization implementing AI and it's not been done in the proper way, what they'd see is, okay, here are some leaders. They run by trust and integrity and respect and all these great values. But they're throwing in AI, which is associated in the worker's mind with surveillance, control, monitoring, right? You can see where the mismatch happens, right? There's a gap that needs to be filled. And the gap that the worker fills that with is, there we go again. They're trying to control us. They're trying to monitor us. They don't care about us. They care about the numbers. right? So you can see where the mistrust happens. If we take integrity, for example, that with those values that they're trying to run by, you can see the mismatch there. So you mentioned a very important word, transparency, because transparency can fill those gaps. If we sit workers down and we try to explain, look, this is our intent, this is why we're doing this, these are the advantages, these are the disadvantages, these are the limitations of the tool, you're going to get a much better job at filling that gap instead of them filling that gap. A second point that I want to make is involving them in the process. Right? If you want buy-in, you mentioned buy-in there. If you want them to buy into the process, you need to involve them in it. Right? They need to have a voice at the table. And so, it moves from control and this type of stuff to, look, we want your involvement. We want you to sit around the table with us. We want to understand why we're doing it. We want your input. We want this to succeed, right? So filling that gap is really important. Psychological safety is a third really critical point, right? Workers need to be able to question the outputs of AI. You need to maintain, as leadership, you need to maintain that environment where people can question AI. And the last thing I'll say is, it's really critical, if you're going to implement AI in your organization, that it is not viewed as a means to punish for performance management, but rather to coach, to support, to improve. So what I'm basically saying is it should not become a blame game using AI. So if you want to successfully implement AI in your organization, definitely transparency. You've got to involve them in the process, right? Psychological safety, and do not use it as a blame game.
Thank you so much. Thank you. That was amazing. Okay. Thank you so much. I would like us to have, a kind of a poll, from the audience, to see a little bit of what we are discussing today and how our audience feel about this. Please, I would like us, to run a poll. By the raise of hands, based on what you have heard we are, discussing today, how many of us in this room will be comfortable to assign AI 100%, to manage critical safety risk activities, just by raise of hands? So we just really want to understand what we are having here and how you feel about it, just by raise of hands. Do anybody in agreement about AI, that you're 100%, that we can, feed in AI and then we are better off with it and then it can do all the whole thing, become autonomous for us? Is anybody here? I guess it's only me. All right. So, gentlemen, what you can see here is that this statistics shows a very strong gap when it comes to AI adoption. And what it means is that we still have that same human-centered principles when it comes to AI adoption or whatever you want to implement. So for any AI systems or predictive tools that you want to feed in the system or in your operation, so there should be a human in the loop. So in this way, so you can have a better level of security, you can have a better level of accountability, just like what Dr. Waddah said, that aspect of accountability and all that. So with this, we will be able to have a better AI that will not be able to fail 100% and then put our assets and people and then also environment at risk. Now, gentlemen, we are about looking at the last part of our conversation. I will need each and every one of you to tell me, what do you think that is the most critical step that we can take to be able to deploy an AI system or an AI model that can be reliable, that will be able to create safety, that will have ethics, and at the same time, a clear governance structure? So maybe I will start with Dr. Waddah.
I don't think it's really possible. I think I'm not surprised that the audience came back and nobody lifted their hand. And I think the reason why you said you used 100%, there is no 100%, I mean, most of us maybe don't realize this. I because of the course of my work and my life, I travel a lot. I must take about 20, 30 flights a year at least, and sometimes long haul flights. And when you think about it, and usually, because these long haul flights, I'm taking 777s or A380s and things like that. Most of these new aircraft, 92 to 96% of the journey, the flying time, when the aircraft is in operation, either taking off or in flight or landing, it is actually flying by wire. It is basically autopilot, right? But imagine if the pilot came in the morning and he said, "Hey, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be flying, to London, flying at whatever, 35,000 feet, and, just keep your seatbelts on. By the way, I just want to reassure you that don't worry, 96% of this flight is actually being managed by an AI, by an autopilot, and me and my friend here, the co-pilot, so and so, we're just here, in case anything goes wrong, and we're just observing things, and we're sitting back. And by the way, and this is statistically true, that a lot of pilots actually fall asleep because you're sitting there and the plane is flying, so you're not concentrating or anything. They fall asleep. They say actually 30% of the time the pilot falls asleep. And actually, what a more scary statistic is that 25% or more, the pilot gets up after he fell asleep and looks at his co-pilot, and guess what? Co-pilot is also asleep, right? So at the end of the day, we are already relying a lot on AI, on autopilot and stuff like that. But I just want to go back to the question that I started with, and I think trust is very important. And I think what Harry was saying is that we are developing these technologies, and slowly we are relying more and more on these technologies. The problem is that gross failure of the technology can cause a big issue. The question is, if I said, if we went to autonomous flights instead of having pilots, and then the planes can take off and land, and then we said that the percentage of flights that will fall out of the sky is, say, 20 flights a year. We'll lose 20 flights by using AI. People come up and say, no, that's unacceptable because you're killing all these people on these flights. But if I went and told you that there's about 40 flights a year that crash out of the millions of flights which take off and land every day, and with AI, we drop that by 50%. Now, as a scientist, as a human being, as a leader, I should accept that. I should say, well, with AI, actually, I'm going to kill half the people that I'm already killing because of human error, right? Mm-hmm. But if I was running now, I was asked to run an Uber company, right, with autonomous. So I don't have drivers now. I have 15, 20 vehicles that operate autonomously. You book the car, it comes to you, there's no driver, get in the car and it takes you here and there. Let's assume that the regulations allow that. Let's say that something goes wrong. I go back to this question of accountability. I can go back and I can then sue the AI company who installed the AI into the car. I can, maybe the hardware designers, I can sue them if I find out that there was a mistake. But the passenger is dead. And the passenger and his family or whatever will raise the case against me because they used my service. I'm ultimately accountable. Unless we start to educate the leaders in organizations that when you delegate the responsibility to an AI, it's only assisted intelligence, yeah? It's associated intelligence. It isn't only artificial intelligence. We cannot just assume that we employ this AI. It will never, ever be, can be artificial intelligence, assisted intelligence. It can never be accountable intelligence.
Absolutely.
Unless we come to the point, and some scientists are going into this is a realm that we shouldn't get into now, but that actually this AI now is starting, some of the scientists are saying it can feel, it can understand, it has a conscience. Once you get to that point and you say that the AI has a conscience, then it's a completely different discussion that we get into. But as far as I'm concerned right now, AI is just a program. It's a very intelligent program, very fast-thinking programs, but it does not have a conscience. So you can delegate some responsibility to it, but you must continue to retain the accountability.
Absolutely. So that's great.
I think I'll pick up where Dr. Waddah left. We talk of, why people don't trust, because there is no transparency, there is no what you call visible and felt impact of that. If you have a leader, CEO, who motivates you a lot and tells you, not safe, don't work. right? You hear him, you feel, right? You say he's a great leader. He's given throughout the organization very open, transparent communication. If it's unsafe, don't do, right? Or stop work authority, which many companies have got. Now, how many years this has taken? It has taken decades. Heart and Mind program. Hearts and Minds is a program in the industry for decades. And now it's taking good shape now from reactive to proactive as we transition. Can AI make the transition? Big question mark. All of you believe it doesn't today. Yeah. So you don't have faith on AI to be autopilot or autonomous, yeah, running systems. So we still need to build that gap by gradual transition from, by embracing more and more tools, making it more visible, making every one of you as part of the program. If I am a part of the program, I better trust because I'm engaged. I know how it works. And there may be blind spots. Today why we don't trust AI, there are a lot of the algorithmic blind spots, as I said earlier.
Absolutely.
It is either the way I define the algorithm in the refinery, high pressure, high temperature, highly corrosive material, toxic, H2S, all this. So do I take a risk by saying my algorithm is very good? You adopt it. You can, as you said, take a nap and the refinery will run on its own. What if there is a H2S leak and few people die? Who takes the ethical and moral, questions arising out of it? Today we have no answer. We can't simply say AI, I've been running the refinery based on AI. I can't say that. So we need to evolve. And I'm not sure whether we reached 100%, but yeah, Dr. Waddah was talking about flight crashes. There are drones today which are completely autonomous. They take off and they come back. Now, drone technology has evolved so fast in the last 2 to 3 years, not more than that. So the technology takeoff is very rapid. So I'm very optimistic that technologies will evolve to help us as tools, not to be masters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Harry. So basically, for the sake of time, I think definitely we need to start looking at wrapping up this. For the audience, please, for the sake of time, if you have any questions for the panelists, so please, we're going to be standing behind at the IOSH stand, to take any of your questions, right? So closing up from this, one thing that is for sure that we must know is that AI cannot replace accountability. AI cannot replace trust. AI cannot replace what we call, AI doesn't have sympathy, all right? So it's critically very important. So any AI systems you are deploying today has to do with something that you have to go through an AI assessment readiness, which is critically very important. So please remember that IOSH has always been a strong force and a tremendous body that has been, continued with strong commitment in the area of readiness and then also AI, innovations. So thank you so much for listening. Okay, so please help me to thank the panelists as well, Rav. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.